when you look at the graph that shows sexlessness, and I know that maybe that's on the reverse, and it seems like something interesting is happening there, and I'm not sure I fully understand, even though we talked about it at the beginning. But anyway, on the graph, I think this same thing leading up to 2018, and then I need to update my data, but you can see where Tinder hits, and then sexlessness goes up. Because I'm guessing we're getting into the top percentage of men now monopolize. And so you get a huge number of guys that are having no sex and a small number of guys that are having a ton of sex. And that feels like a mismatch to me.
Yeah.
One, I'd love to get your take on that, but are there others?
Yeah, certainly. And like that could be seen as mismatch or almost a return to this effective polygyny. So if I've talked earlier about how we have this ancestral history of exactly that polygyny. And if you're to look at that data of the top 20% and the top 5% of men really having a lot of sexual partners, but a lot of other men appearing to be disenfranchised, that does look like an effective polygyny. So it could be a return rather than a mismatch. But yeah, it's facilitated by the online dating. Other aspects of mismatch, huge one is the control over our birth control. The pill is probably the most paradigm shifting technology for our mating psychology, or to impact our mating.
How's that not only good?
Because if we think back to those statistics about women, the involuntary childless women, 80% of childless women were involuntarily so. That's a massively high number. So what must be happening for a lot of them, and I'd refer your viewers to the documentary called Birth Gap by Stephen Shaw. It's fantastic. It explores the population crisis. And he talks to women who report over and over again that they just simply left it too late to find a partner. And when you talk about this idea of women leaving it too late, you're not just talking about their fertility, their biological fertility. You don't find a partner you're happy with, convince them to marry you. It doesn't all wrap itself up in a neat little bow in a handful of years if you start trying only at the age of 30. It's like a really, really squeezed time window that you're imposing on yourself. So that's, for many of those women, I would wager it's inadvertent. You know, they didn't see it panning out that way and they just left it too late or couldn't find the right partner. So that's evolutionary novel. Dating apps are a huge one. They expose us to more potential mates in a lifetime, or in a few minutes, than we would be exposed to in a lifetime throughout our ancestral history. Now, the way that works in so many different ways, one could be romantic rejection. So I'm asked all the time, I research incels, and one thing people say to me all the time is, why do they care about the rejection so much? Why not just go on? There's plenty more fish in the sea. And ultra-rationalist, logical person could say, yes, that's right, there are plenty of more fish in the sea, just move on. But if you think about what rejection meant for most of our ancestral history, it was really costly, because there was only a couple of dozen potential mates that you might meet in your lifetime. They all kind of knew each other, so if they saw you getting rejected, your reputation takes a spike. So we're designed to be very anxious. It's meant to be very anxiety-inducing to engage in the mating market, because it going wrong could be very costly. So if we also think about dating apps, and even just in terms of big cities and university settings, exposing us to so many potential mates messes with our commitment devices. So why would we be inclined to commit to one partner when we're getting the impression that there's a limitless supply of other potential mates around? And we've got this FOMO of fear of missing out. Is there someone better? Should I keep swiping? Then you got on top of that, just the business model of the dating apps is designed to keep you in the dating room, in the swiping room, to keep you single. Why would their business model be anything else?
That's gnarly.
It's gnarly, and they talk about, designed to be deleted, but if you really think about it, they want swipers. They want people playing the dating game, and they kind of even transparently move to this. Some of their advertisement campaigns are like, it's great to be single, single and swiping. That's good for them,
Woof.
I know.
That's that one I had not thought of. I should have. That's very self-evident as you get into it. Okay, so we have these incredible mismatches. How do we, when you think about, so this is something I have to think about a lot. So we're creating a metaverse. I hate calling it that, but that'll get you close enough. And so I have to think about this a lot. Like people are now going to be able to build their identity. They're detached from the real world. They are able to get some of the faux cues and things that they might have to deal with they're getting faux cues of fitness that if they were in the real world, they would not be able to mistake. And so one of those would be like pornography, where you're getting some sort of subconscious cue that everything is well. Where does porn sit in your stack of problems?
Yeah, that's one idea, that it could be this kind of pseudo relationships. In terms of porn, there's two ways of looking at it. So the people who use porn, most men, are quite sexually active men who also simultaneously want to go out mate seeking too. But
we have data on that.
They're still. It doesn't seem to interfere with their mate seeking. Now, I'm a bit less optimistic about virtual reality, and as that gets more sophisticated and more embodied cognition of will people, and it becomes more costly to engage in the real mating market, will men just increasingly retreat? So it doesn't appear to be that it's just pornography per se, because that gets tied up with, oh, well, very sexually unrestricted men use most pornography. But the idea of retreating into virtual worlds, virtual status games like video games and just online on the internet instead of mate seeking, that seems to have a bit more traction, I think. But just pornography on its own gets a bit caught up with, yes, but the problem is that also the most sexually active, people with the highest sexual desires use a lot of porn too. So it kind of loses that dulling effect. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm not yet clear if people that are very unsuccessful, are they also using porn?
Yeah, I would say that they are as like a coping kind of mechanism. But it's not clear to me that just stopping porn in isolation would encourage the mate seeking. But yeah.
That is surprising to me. So I don't know if there's data or if that's your hunch, but so what you're putting forth is that if I'm not masturbating, that doesn't mean, so I'm having pent up desire. That doesn't mean that I will go seek a natural human relationship to sort that out.
Yeah, and that's the surprising thing. We're seeing these data on men just not being motivated to seek mates, and it just could be.
What the fuck?
Yeah, right.
So you're tipping over. I'm realizing now I had a base assumption that was these guys are all masturbating furiously, and that is what placates them enough to not go out. Are you saying that's not true? So these guys do they have low? So, okay, let's get into incels. Do incels have, as just an extreme sort of end of this, just so we can cut to the chase? For people that don't know, incel, involuntary celibate, they want a partner, but they believe, rightly or wrongly, that they cannot get a partner. One of my pieces of advice to them would be stop masturbating, because that's going to apply massive amounts of biological pressure on you to go out.
Yeah.
So now I need you to help me understand how that is not true.
Incels are a tricky one. When we measured them on porn use against our non-incel single men, it was kind of virtually the same. So it's very hard to kind of find control groups for porn users, because every young man is pretty much using porn. It's hard to do those studies. But I just wrote a recent article for Aporia called The Allure of Inceldom, Why Incels Resist Ascension. And a lot of incels, it's intuitive to think, oh yes, they really want a mate, they really want a partner, and they'd do anything to go out and get it. But that's not the case. And all sorts of people talk about how incels are simply aiming too high, they need to lower their standards. But my idea is they're actually not aiming at all. And there's actually unique appeal to the incel identity that gets them hunkered down into that life and that victimhood mentality, rather than engaging with the anxiety-inducing mating market. So to be romantically successful, you need to go through a lot of anxiety. You need to go out, put yourself out there, get rejected a lot, get your heart broken, all those things.
Is there any data on people taking anti-anxiety medication and
mate seeking
success? Yeah.
I'm not familiar there, but we have data certainly that anxiety levels are very, very high among incels. and increasingly just among young men and women, more anxiety everywhere we look. But yeah, and that could be feeding into this reluctance to engage in the mating market, which is, like we say, one of the most anxiety-inducing things you can do. It's scary to put yourself out there, and the most successful romantic people are ones who are able to take rejection, to go through it. And you could say to incels, I promise you it's worth it. It's worth it to go through the other side, go through all the rejection. But that has become less obvious to me for incels as I've gone on.
So it's not obvious that going through the rejection will yield anything,
Oh,
or that getting in a relationship is worth the anxiety?
I think it's worth it, me personally, but it's not very easy for me to say to every incel who has faced just a lifetime of being rejected to say, yes, it's worth it. Keep rolling the dice. Keep rolling the dice. It might,
because they may actually not end up with a partner.
or the cost may come. It may be so anxiety inducing to them that it's who am I to say push yourself through that pain, you know?
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't have the neuron for who am I to say.
Right,
Which
yeah.
my audience either finds very entertaining, or I'm sure in the comments is shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
But unfortunately I don't have that neuron. So who am I to say?
Yeah.
I am going to say this because I really want to see people thrive.
Mm-hmm.
And I am a big believer that the only difference between me and the level of success that I've had, whether it's in my relationships or money, is that I really believe that you can get better, and that at anything, and that on the other side of in the dating market is nothing will ever give you more, not money, not success, not accolades, nothing than sharing your life with somebody.
Yes.
that you're able to have a very high thriving relationship with. Because yes, you could be in a marriage with somebody and sharing your life with somebody you hate, and that would be a nightmare. I literally used to have a recurring nightmare about being in a loveless marriage. So I get that side. Yeah. So I want to the thing that I'm grappling with in what you're saying is that if I knew that they could have a relationship on the other side of that, I'd be like, bro, it is worth it.
Yes.
Like just from a biological standpoint, I'm guaranteeing you that it's worth it, because the pair bonding. And look, there are realities to be faced about how many receptors do you have for vasopressin and oxytocin. If you don't have enough, then you may not experience the kind of thing that I experienced. But if you have a sufficient level of that, which I will just assume most people do, nothing will give you more ever than being somebody's number one and sharing that life together.
Yeah.
What scares me is that some of these guys may be for real, of such low mate value that you aren't going to end up with somebody on the other side of that. Yeah. And so if you're saying that there are some people that don't meet what I'll call minimum requirements, this really does suck. And you are going to have to find another path to fulfillment. But my thing is, I think most people understand where they fall on that spectrum.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. So let me rephrase what I was trying to say is, yes, I think it's worth it. And I think what's on the other side is flourishing and fulfillment that is worth all that pain. But I guess what I was trying to say when I said, oh, who am I to say, is that I was trying to understand the mindset of why that wouldn't be obvious to someone, why that wouldn't be obvious to an incel. And I began to realize that incels get a lot out of their social identity, of the victimhood identity, the common enemy of women all suck and Chad sucks. They get a rich lexicon of humorous trolling terminology. They have their sense of fraternity with their other fellow incels, a black and white rubric through which to view the world. They actually get a lot out of that identity that I'm beginning to see, compared with engaging in an anxiety-inducing mating market that, like you said, may not actually yield some positive results at all. We think it would, and it's intuitive to think, oh yeah, just roll the dice enough times, and just from a sheer numbers thing, that's probably right. But it may be so costly to do that, they just say it's not worth all that pain to go through. What's another bleak idea is that encouraging incels to re-engage with the mating market, these socially anxious young men who aren't very experienced with women, very insecure, we might be careful what we wish for if they find girlfriends, because people always talk about how dangerous these sexless young men are. These incels are so dangerous. But what is really dangerous is an insecure, jealous boyfriend. That they engage in way more intimate partner violence and things like that than any sexless young man. So that's a bit of a dark kind of truth to reckon with as well, is that this might be no picnic. And like we talked about earlier, the engaging with the mating market, it's a baptism of fire. There's no training ground for it. There's just go out there into the world, make a bunch of mistakes, learn on your feet. So I guess what I was trying to say is, rather than who am I to say is it worth it, is that I can understand why an individual incel might elect to hunker down into victimhood identity and online worlds rather than engaging with the mating market they don't have much faith in.
Oh, that was dark.
I know.
Dark. Yeah. I love it.
If you like that clip, check out another powerful clip right here, and I'll see you there.